I broke up with my boyfriend over the Tubi Super Bowl commercial. I, 23 female, broke up with my boyfriend, 25 male, over the reaction he had to me over the commercial. For those of you who are unaware, during the Super Bowl commercials, Tubi, a streaming app, played a prank where they made it look like someone was changing the TV over to their app. I'm sure that in many households it caused chaos and was a funny event, but not in mine. My boyfriend thought I was the one changing the channel and began screaming at me violently, calling me things that I don't even want to write down. Even as I told him it was a commercial, he ignored me and kept blowing up at me and punched a hole in our living room wall. He eventually realized what actually happened and awkwardly apologized, but I was so disgusted over his reaction to a 15-second commercial. I feel like if you can't keep your anger in check and get that violent over something so small, I don't want to be around for it. We'd been together for over a year, living together for the past 2 months, and I've known him to get angry at things sometimes, but this really took me off guard, and I can't forget how unsafe I felt around him during this. In the morning, I took some of my things and I'm now staying at my parents' house. I left him a note telling him how I felt and that I didn't think we were going to work out long term. He's been messaging me and calling me repeatedly. My parents told me that I'm overreacting since he had a bit to drink and the Super Bowl gets everyone riled up, but I don't feel that I am. I don't think it's normal to be that angry. Oh my god, good for you for getting out of that when you can. When people show you who they are, listen to them. Who would have thought Tubi would be saving people's lives long term? What a relationship test. Am I wrong for making homemade food for everyone except for my brother's stepdaughter? I, 27 female, am not a professional chef, but I have taken a bunch of cooking classes and love making elaborate meals for friends and family. About 2 years ago, my brother Greg, 25 male, married Cheryl, 34 female. Cheryl has a daughter from a previous relationship, Becca, 9 female, who has several health conditions, including celiac and a severe dairy allergy that requires her to carry an EpiPen. Last weekend, I hosted a dinner at my house for my parents' wedding anniversary. I made a fancy 5-course dinner, and in addition to my parents, I invited our close family friends. Greg, Cheryl, and Becca, and my sister, her boyfriend, and their twins, both ate. Because of Becca's food restrictions, I found a restaurant in town that specializes in gluten-free, dairy-free, as well as other allergen-free food and arranged for them to make a full meal for Becca that I could pick up in advance of the party. I have made a variety of specialty meals in the past. For example, keto meals when my friend was following that diet, and I liked the challenge, but knowing how serious Becca's restrictions were, I didn't trust myself to make her meal. I have ADHD and get easily distracted, and if I even used the wrong spoon or didn't completely wash some flour off a bowl, it could make her incredibly sick. I thought the takeout solution was fine, but when I served the food, I saw Cheryl looking at Becca's plate with a stony face. For her part, Becca started eating and seemed fine. Cheryl whispered to Greg, and Greg asked if he could talk to me in the kitchen. When we got there, he said that it was unbelievable that I couldn't be bothered to make something for Becca, that they'd been bragging about what a great cook I am to her, and that he knew I'd made keto, vegan, and other complicated kind of foods in the past. Now she would feel left out because she didn't get to eat what the rest of the family was eating. He said that it was obvious that I didn't care about making his stepdaughter feel like a part of the family and that they were leaving. Greg, Cheryl, and Becca then left, which put a damper on the rest of the party. I feel like I did my best at the time, but in hindsight, I wonder if I should have tried harder to make Becca feel included since she was a relatively new addition to our family. So, am I the asshole? I feel like guys, when a girl tells them something, they don't use their own brain to think and they just like, okay, yeah, you're right. And they just he didn't step back to think like, wow, that's actually really considerate of her to go get my stepdaughter a meal and still continue to feed everyone else. You don't have to do shit, realistically, right? And especially when you have a food allergy, it's your job to take care of that person.
Am I the asshole for telling my wife the cat is still her responsibility, even if she is pregnant? My wife, 28, and I, 36, are expecting our first baby. 3 years ago, my wife decided she desperately wanted a cat. I hate cats, and all animals in the house really, so I was against it. She wouldn't stop talking about it, so we finally made a deal where she could get a cat, but it was her responsibility, and I would have nothing to do with it. She agreed. She stuck to her word, and I stuck to mine, and mostly ignored the cat. Now she is pregnant and asked me if I can scoop the litter until she gives birth because of the toxoplasmosis. But I looked it up, and as long as she wears gloves and washes her hands, she should be good. So I told her, absolutely not. She wasn't happy, but I reminded her of our agreement when we got the cat. I told her it was her responsibility, and if she didn't want to take care of it anymore, with the new baby coming, we can get rid of it and find it a new home. She said no and has been scooping the litter. Her sister was over, though, and saw her doing this and flipped out at me, telling me how dangerous it is. But of course, her sister is going to be on her side and overreact. I never wanted the cat, so I don't see how I'm wrong. Am I the asshole? My husband started acting strangely upon my sister's pregnancy announcement. I feel like I'm going crazy here thinking about it. My husband and I were at my parents' house for dinner. All was going well. We were talking, laughing, eating, but as soon as my sister got up from her seat and announced her pregnancy, I noticed at first that my husband got quiet, didn't get up to congratulate her like the rest of us did, and just kept staring at or towards her. I'm not entirely sure. I repeatedly asked if he was okay, and he mumbled about feeling a bit sick. That was strange because he was perfectly fine all day. Literally, moments later, he started throwing up like I had no idea what was happening to him. He sat on the bathroom floor near the toilet, just looking down and refusing to let me help him up to wash his face. I kept asking him if he was okay, but no response. My family were worried about him, and I had to take him home. I checked his temp and blood pressure, but all were normal. Still, complete silence on his part. He went to sleep shortly after, and in the early morning at 5:30, I woke up to the sound of him crying in the shower. I rushed in, asking if he was okay, but still no response, other than telling me he needed a minute with himself. I almost lost it, demanding he explain what was going on, and he told me he was just feeling overwhelmed. ... From what? He's not the type who gets stressed out from work or anything of the sort. This is just so strange and out of character of him. He got dressed and left, then refused to even talk about it. I can't help but feel like this reaction was triggered by my sister's pregnancy announcement, since this all started right after she made it. What makes me feel so horrible is the fact that my sister once implied that my husband was her type and hoped to get someone like him. Yikes. She has a boyfriend, by the way. This could be nothing, but I can't shake this weird feeling about what happened.
Story time about why I hate Valentine's Day. So a little background information, I was 22 years old and I had been dating this guy for almost a year. And we're gonna call him Jimmy. Most of Jimmy and I's relationship had been long distance because literally after 2 months of us dating, he was offered a job in a different state. And I never worried about him cheating on me or anything like that because he seemed like a really honest and genuine guy. But of course I was wrong because he said that he couldn't do anything for Valentine's Day because he had to work. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, well, I'm just gonna fly to him, so we can spend Valentine's Day together. And it'll be a nice surprise. So a few days before Valentine's Day, I get my plane ticket and I wanted to do something special. So I wore some nice lingerie under a trench coat. Well, fast forward, my plane lands and I get an Uber to his apartment. And when I knock on his door, I hear a woman's voice from inside saying, "Don't worry, I'll get the door." Like for part 2. Part 2 about why I hate Valentine's Day. So like I said, I Uber to his apartment and I knock on the door and I hear some woman from inside say, "Don't worry, babe, I'll get it." So I hurry up and try to tie my coat because I had untied it thinking that my boyfriend was going to open the door. But no, why would my boyfriend open his own door to his own apartment that he lives alone in? So she opens the door and she's like, "Hi, what can I help you with?" And I'm like, "Oh, is this apartment blah, blah, blah?" And she's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Oh, well, is Jimmy here?" And she was like, "Yeah." So she calls Jimmy over to the door. I look directly at him and I'm like, "Oh, is this like your friend or something?" And she's like, "Excuse me, I'm his fiance." So I'm looking at him all confused and I start screaming that he's a liar, a cheater. He's like, "Babe, go call the police. I have no idea who this woman is. She sounds crazy." So his fiance walks away and he goes, "I'm sorry, I'll call you later." And then security escorts me off the property. Needless to say, I never talk to him ever again. Story time about how this boy stabbed me with a pencil in kindergarten. So a little background information, I was 6 years old and in kindergarten, obviously. I'm not gonna lie, this story kind of shows that it doesn't matter how old a child is, they can literally still be very mean and yeah. Well, during the middle of the school year, there was this new kid who came to our class and his name was Freddie. Now, Freddie coming in the middle of the year was kind of sad because everybody already had their friends. They didn't really want to talk to the new kid. And what made it even worse was the fact that he was a teacher's pet. And he was the teacher's favorite. So he was always picked to go up to the board and be the line leader, which made the kids hate him even more. For example, during lunch, Freddie would go and try to sit with some of the kids and they would call the teacher over, say that he was doing something that was annoying them or really gross. And the teachers would remove him and put him at a table alone by himself. And I was one of the kids that didn't really make fun of him. I just kind of sat back and laughed, which I know is terrible. But like for part 2. part 2 about this boy who stabbed me with a pencil in kindergarten. So like I said, everybody would pretty much bully him, and I was one of the kids that just sat back and laughed, didn't say anything to him directly. Eventually, we were getting in trouble for discluding him. We would all have to stay inside during recess with our heads down on the desk in the dark. So then everybody act like they were going to include him. Like the one time they were like, okay, we're playing hide and seek, you go hide. And then they never went to find him. So then this kid actually started getting violent. My guess is because the teachers and principal were not doing anything about it. When everybody was walking, he would purposely trip kids. This one time, this girl brought in pencils for the whole class, and she didn't give him one. So he said that he felt sick the one day, and all the kids went out to recess, and he went around and broke every single pencil. And I came in and I found it, so I told the teacher. And then during nap time, he put his mat by me. And when I finally fall asleep, he literally comes over and stabs me in the back of the neck with a pencil.